Riding a bike should be simple, but somehow it's become one of the most divisive issues on our streets, leaving one cyclist to say this.
I never thought I would get back on a bike.
Cyclists are often seen as a distinct group from drivers.
Generally, cyclists aren't liked. I think they think that we don't pay road tax.
I'll make sure to indicate and look into my mirrors to make sure that the cyclist doesn't get trapped while I'm turning.
And most motorists are very good actually, otherwise there'll be bodies everywhere.
Even celebrities have found themselves caught in the debate.
My bike got stolen, and from outside, basically my front door, just down there, I got up in the morning, it was 5 o'clock, I put all the house lights on, was stomping around making a cup of tea, and it was taken while I was actually up, because I had a look at 10 to 5, it was there, and at 10 past 5 it had gone.
So what is it about cycling that stirs such emotion? Cycle infrastructure is often at the heart of the debate. Norwich, one of the first UK cities to pedestrianise the street, offers an example. During the pandemic, Exchange Street was closed to traffic, making more space for cyclists and pedestrians. But it wasn't without tension.
Just people gathered in the street and just sort of stood in the street chatting. And initially the police came along and tried to clear people on, but then realised, well, actually, no, when it was pointed out to them, look at the sign that says pedestrian. So this went on for quite a while. And in the end, so every 18 months or so, there was kind of a temporary traffic order that said, and in the end, when they came to renew it, the council decided, or the main man responsible for this, that they wouldn't renew it and they'd allow cars to go down there, which so wrong-headed. I think the reason he said was, it's dangerous for drivers because, he's seen drivers coming down there have to turn around. It's dangerous for them, poor drivers, so we'll open it.
To the disappointment of the local cycling campaign, Norfolk County Council called the change part of emergency measures on an experimental basis. Meanwhile, Manchester City Council say that putting the right kind of infrastructure is central to our ambition, referencing a £70 million investment project.
It's now one way for motor traffic, but there's a nice wide bi-directional cycle lane running all through this section of Deansgate. And that was a little bit controversial because people who like to drive around town don't like to see their driving access inhibited. People don't really like change. If people are used to driving both ways down a street whenever they want, they don't like to be told that they suddenly can't.
The Alliance of British Drivers argue that it's pie in the sky trying to get everyone to cycle or use public transport everywhere. Bikes were successfully trialled on Metrolink trams for the first time, and there's plans to make this permanent in off-peak hours.
So I think we need to get to a place where people don't see the city centre as somewhere to drive to or somewhere to drive through. It's somewhere that you drive around if you need to, or it's somewhere where you drive to the outskirts and then walk in, cycle in, or drive to a park and ride tram stop.
What it's like to cycle varies between locations. Manchester was named European Capital of Cycling by ACS Europe last year, but not everyone supports new cycle lanes. The Alliance of British Drivers claim that not all road users benefit, saying drivers see millions spent on cycle lanes, many of them barely used, while roads remain full of potholes. They say motorists see cyclists as receiving preferential treatment.
Of course you don't see cyclists because we can't be compared, for instance, with the number of cars on the road. And it's hard to compare also cycling with the number of pedestrians. I mean, I have been in sort of consultations where I've seen very angry residents say, I don't ever see any bikes on this cycle route. But that doesn't mean that they're not used. They're just used differently.
Many cyclists argue that segregated cycle lanes are the key to safer journeys.
There's a kind of minority of drivers who really, don't seem to care for your safety, and that's really worrying. You do sometimes feel your life's in danger.
People in the middle lane have just decided to pull into my lane regardless of the fact I'm there. And it's like, well, I need to be in that lane, so whether they see me, whether they don't, I don't know. It's happened 3 times on that junction.
Shared paths only work when they're not shared, say the Norwich cycling campaign. Norfolk County Council defended the new Colney Road path, stating 2 metres is accepted within DFT guidance. In Brighton, Bicycles Cycle Group have been calling for further protected cycle lanes, and steps have been taken to create more segregated routes along the seafront, narrowing roads and removing cycle paths from pavements. A fatal incident outside Leicester train station and a lack of knowledge of the Dutch reach method have been cited as a tragic reminder of the need for fully separated paths.
Sam Bolton was killed, somebody opened a car door onto him. He fell into a road and a fast moving vehicle collided with him, and that ended in a tragedy. The family campaigned with the support of Leicester Critical Mass participants and other campaign groups in the city for much more significant changes outside the railway station.
The scheme created single-way cycle tracks on each side of the road.
It's the access to the station itself that is the issue, and whether it be taxis, whether it be people dropping off or whatever, it's just not the right environment at the moment.
Generally working really well. The level of casualties has significantly gone down. The levels of people who are walking, cycling and catching the bus have significantly gone up. I think the cycling numbers tripled within 3-4 years of that scheme.
Although just cycling through Leicester, it was wonderful cycling to the city centre. I never knew Leicester was so good, so cycle friendly in the town centre.
Floating bus stops are another point of contention. The National Federation of the Blind, UK, calls them highly dangerous and not fit for purpose. Future installations of these are currently paused across the country. One person who won't be cycling in the city is Anthony. He was involved in a collision 5 years ago and hasn't cycled since, until today.
A car had basically decided that they were going to overtake me and then slam on their brakes, coming to a complete stop, therefore forcing me to have only 3 choices. One of those was going straight across our side of the road onto gravel. The other one was to go straight over them, or the other one was to go across a hedge and then land in a field of grass. So that's the option I chose.
These stories highlight the risks faced by cyclists.
We have 3 people who now or have cycled with the group who have been in really serious accidents where cars have come up and taken them off. One person was, his wife was killed. The other 2 were rear end shunted. All 3 of them were drivers who should not have been driving. They were elderly and immediately handed in their licenses. So I think there's, there are people out there. There is a talk at the moment about elderly drivers and testing and all that sort of stuff. That cannot happen soon enough.
Between 2019 to 2023, the government report that an average of 2 cyclists were killed each week.
I had one driver try and hit me off the road with his car. I don't think expected me. And then there was a red light, which is fantastic because I could go up to him and tell him what I thought about that action. Using your car as a weapon.
At the same time, others point out that many drivers can be respectful.
Like sometimes I'd be cycling and then there's so much space and a car would wait like on the top of the hill, and then I'm like, oh damn, now I have to like cycle really quickly up the hill. Because they're like waiting for you and they're like super careful.
Political support can make a difference and influence attitudes.
We've just had the spending review, and quite honestly the amount awarded to active travel is pathetic. It looks like it's actually a huge cut overall.
The East Midlands Combined County Authority has, however, received £200 million in funding. The region's climate coalition are calling for much of it to be spent on cycle routes, such as Nottingham's new bridge over the Trent.
If you live in the north of the city and you want to go north-south, there's very little decent cycle paths that allow that, and people have been campaigning for years for that to happen. The east-west route is so well used. I use it a lot more than I ever did cycling kind of east-west before now. And I would cycle to the north of the city more if I felt that there were safe routes to do so on.
For some, the riding of couriers has become the face of cycling.
There are clearly people who have other things on their mind when they're cycling. and being driven by time to make a delivery does tend to take their attention away from cycling. Plus the fact it'd help if they had some lights and some basic common sense. I don't think it's necessarily cycling knowledge. I think basic common sense would help. And they are the worst offenders, by far. I mean, whether it be red lights, whether it be driving without lights, without driving, all dressed in black.
Just Eat states that its riders are expected to follow local laws and wear proper safety gear. Cycling generates strong opinions. In April, Jeremy Vine announced he'd stopped sharing cycling footage online after repeated backlash.
The static every time I produced a cycling video was so enormous. It was racking up. Even a basic one would do about 80,000, 100,000. And then there was a lot of incoming. And I would kind of start initially with the idea of trying to rationally explain why, if you're a driver, you can't turn left across a cycle lane, because would you do that across a bus lane? I don't think so. But that got a bit exhausting. The trolling got exhausting. I also have a book out called Murder on Line 1, and I really thought I wanted to do some fictional murder, not some real-life road danger.
In Nottingham, the City Council reports that the number of children learning to ride safely has nearly doubled since before COVID. Infrastructure, policy and public perception will remain key to this. Jeremy Vine's decision to stop sharing his rides and the backlash tied to the actions of a few delivery riders show how emotionally charged the debate can become. The reality is that many cyclists are also drivers. From potholes, traffic jams or poor infrastructure, all road users want reliable and safe ways to travel.
It is a confidence boost which I've now had, and it's, I have missed it.
Ultimately, it's not about cyclists versus drivers.
It needs to be joint responsibility, driver and cyclists.
The challenges remain in aligning public and political support.